Why don't we just get started, please?
Good morning. As a matter of introduction, I've been working on this thing called DNS for a long time. I've talked about DNS issues once in a while at RIPE meetings. I'm not a regular attendee. And in my new job, I have at Cloudflare, I have been exposed to certain things that we, the DNS gurus, thought was non-issue. So I'm going to be talking about some of the issues that can be done to make the DNS, which is an old protocol, work better in the world that we live in today and with the expectations that we have. I remember, well, yesterday, one of the first talks here was about Ethernet. I remember when Ethernet was 3 megabits. Now we're talking about 500 gigabits. So lots of things have changed. Many things in DNS, policy-wise and operational settings, have not changed in that time frame. So maybe it's time to start looking at it. Okay, so if you take a picture of your friend or yourself and you post it on Facebook, when will all your friends see it? Well, you know, it takes no time. But if you want to make some changes in DNS, things start looking a little bit sluggish. So, and unfortunately, you only find out about these things when you want to make the change and where you're in an urgent need to make the change. So things take even longer because you have to learn the process, you have to go to the right place, you have to talk to the right party, and then you have to wait. Okay, if you're in the DNS hierarchy, well, I'm going to be talking about parent and children. An example of a parent could be like the root zone or a TLD operator, and a child could be like your private domain, your company's domain, your favorite cat viewing domain, whatever it is. And in the icon world, we have certain rules. In ccTLDs, they set their own rules. And when things are working, everybody is happy. When things get out, something breaks, it's usually not the entity that made the mistakes that gets blamed. Frequently, the resolver operators get blamed when somebody publishes wrong information. And we had a very good example of that a few weeks ago. How many of you remember the HBO Now rollout? How many of you got rejected by your ISP/resolver because you tried to go there? How many of you sent messages to Twitter or Facebook about censorship by your ISP or anything like that, or the ineptitude of whoever? Well, almost everybody who got blamed in there was a resolver operator. But they were doing the right thing. They were validating DNSSEC. That the publisher, HBO, did not check what the status of their delegation was is their problem, but it made lots of people look bad. There are some technical things we can do as a large DNS operators, but they are not everybody, and we don't necessarily know who to talk to, and all that. Cloudflare is very interested in making the internet better. That is one of our missions. So when we see a problem, we are allowed to go out and talk about it, and that's why I'm here. We are the largest third-party DNS operator in the world. We have somewhere between 1 and 2 million domains that we are operating. Any operator that has more zones operated is also a registrar. We are not a registrar. We are just, so if everybody has registered a domain somewhere, come to us with their domain. We have thousands of customers coming to us every day. We have thousands of customers leaving us every day. The numbers keep going up, so we're getting more than we're losing. So we must be doing something right. And when a customer comes to us, there are certain hiccups in the systems. When they are still a customer, there are things that go that we would like to do. One of the things that we get experience is we get lots of unpopular domains, for whatever definition of unpopular. So many of our customers get DDoSed all the time. We have more traffic coming to us that is attacking us than the traffic that we are actually answering. And there was a very good talk that a coworker of mine gave at the DNS workshop on this topic. So, a third-party DNS operator is somebody who is not part of the DNS registration systems. It is only has a deal with the owner of the domain. And there are many of us. It could be you as a friend of your friend. It could be you could be paying a CDN. You could be paying somebody who's given you a DNS appliance, whatever. But the thing is, we are not anywhere in the registration records. And as a matter of fact, many of the more popular or important domains are operated by third-party operators because of the service we provide. This is the traditional ICANN registration model. It has been copied by most TLDs in the ccTLD space. There is a registrant who talks to either a registrar or reseller, and 99.999% of the time, the registrant does not know whether the entity it's talking to is a reseller or a registrar, so I will conflate those two terms into one. And then the registrar sends the information up to the registry operator that then publishes it in the DNS, and there's somebody who tells the registry what the policies are. Okay, as a third-party DNS operator, I would love to be able to change information in the DNS without having to go through the registrant, because the registrant is not interested in logging into the interface for its registrar at any point except two: when he's coming to me and when he's leaving me. At every other time, they are going to ignore my emails. So if I want to move somebody away from because they're sharing a name server that is always being attacked, so I want to move them to another one, I need to involve them in it. I can't change it for them. If I want to introduce DNSSEC, which I'm doing this year, I can't upload a DS record without talking to the customer. So I can do it when they sign up, but for my existing customer base, I have a problem. If I have to change keys, I have to go to them all and say, please, 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 this is really urgent, please do it, please, and they will ignore me. So it is a problem for the stability of the internet. So the system is not reliable. It is not timely, and I would like to change that. I would like to be able to do this for my customers without them having to be in the loop. I think many of you who might be customers of mine or somebody else would like that too. If you don't, you can always set a button that says no. When I ask them to copy information, they make cut and paste errors, whatever reason, whether it is an IDN issue, whether it is a typing the wrong code, whether it is whatever. There are so many cut and paste errors we see. Well, some of us brilliant people will come and say, you can become a registrar, and that will solve your problem. Not really. Because we can't become a registrar in every ccTLD. We have registration in basically every open ccTLD. I mean, we have customers in every TLD in the world that is open for registrations. When a new one comes on, it's within a week we have some customers there. And if a customer gives us access to their whole registration account, we can do everything, including moving the domain, etc. We don't want to do that. It's a bad idea. Okay. And becoming a registrar in the ccTLD space, in many cases, is difficult. I will leave it at that. So like I said, we want to be able to change information that only refers to the DNS information that's in there. NSs, DSs, and possibly the GLU address record. One of the hardest things we have is to find out who to contact if we need to make a change. Who is absolutely useless. There are a number of TLDs that totally block our systems. We get back who is records that are totally wrong. And when we get something back, it has very 20th century information like phone number, fax number. There are no URLs. There's nothing that my computers can hook up. With thousands of customers that I need to have contacted out a day, that doesn't scale. Secondly, authentication or authorization is important. There is a proposal that Warren Komari and myself did on how to do DNSSEC trust anchor maintenance in band. It works fine if people check for it, but it's not real time. So, but it can be used as a part of a real-time system. So I would like to get everybody to talk to their TLDs and tell them that yes, you would like them to allow DNS operators somehow to make a changes into the system, either via registries or via registrars. If I'm talking to the registry, it should be able to tell me what registrar I should be talking to for each domain, because customer may come to me saying, I'm with registrar A, then they change the registrar B without changing the DNS settings. So I don't know when that happens. Okay, this is what happens, what has to be done. It's a lot of work, but I'm willing to help on getting it done. So start thinking about if this is something you are interested in, if you are worried about, because the last time you do not want to find out what is stopping you when things are going wrong. And I am looking for more CCTLDs who want to participate in experiments of doing things like this, allowing me to modify the records. DNS, TTLs is a second issue of concern to us. For those who don't know about it, the meaning of TTL is this can live this for this long in a cache, depending on your policies. Resolvers say honor this most of the time. Sometimes they chop it on the top end or the low end. And there are some resolvers that are not. TTLs are very important to keep information close to the edges. For popular data, for unpopular data, well, it doesn't make a big difference. There are effects of TTLs. Long TTLs have been associated with stability, but they also mean that DNS is an inconsistent state if you consider during the transition from an old value to a new value. DNS is an loosely coherent database system, so inconsistency is expected. It's a question of how long does it take to settle on the new values. Short TTLs are used a lot. They were very unpopular in the beginning. Now they are becoming extremely popular and useful for many players. The biggest reason why we had these long TTLs used to be reliability. Links went down, computers went down. The expectations today are totally different. We have how long is it since you heard about a TLD, a major TLD going down? All their servers went offline. It's a long time. There have been DNSSEC failures that have brought down TLDs, but not the operation of the name servers per se. Unfortunately, the cost and benefits do not line up nicely. It is easier for a DNS parent to have long TTLs because it means they have to answer fewer queries. For the consumers, like many of you in this room, that is not necessarily good. Like I said before, it takes a long time to get the TTL. If the TTLs are long, changes take a long time. There is a myth that the TTLs only affect the zone operator. Well, the resolvers may do more lookups. Somebody posted on Twitter yesterday after he read my slides, oh no, I changed on my TTLs and I didn't see any increase in traffic. Well, that was wonderful news, but he's not a good example because his servers are both also authoritative and recursive for the local information on the local side. And as it is a small university, it's not accessed that much from the outside world. Yes, on this one, for the long TTLs, it is the time to settle that is affected. And also with long TTLs, it's much harder to diagnose problems because people are not aware of it, and it depends on what is in your resolver when you ask the question. And if you ask the same question twice, you may get different answers because you're talking to different resolvers without knowing it. Because many ISPs have started to use Anycast DNS servers. The records that are affected for this for me are the delegation records, the NS and DS, and Effectively, because of the way we have no idea how resolvers operate, we DNS operators have to assume the worst case. That means the maximum of the parent and child TTL on DS and NS record. And so we could say that the child is a hostage. Probably a little bit strong word, but I wanted to get your attention. So what's the state in TLDs of TTLs today? Well, 30% have NSs that are 2 hours or less. Vast majority has it between 2 hours and a day, with almost all of those at the upper end. And there is a small group that is even bigger than that. Okay, so you may say it's not that bad. Unfortunately, some of the biggest TLDs are in the middle box, except COM is in the top. COM and NET are in the bottom box, which is bad. So for somebody who has a registration in COM or NET, moving a service to Cloudflare takes 2 days. Okay. If you, on the other hand, are in .nl or .Czech Republic, we can do it in a few hours. So if they can do it, why can't everybody else? Oh, and if you're in Russia, .ru, a week. The way I would like to approach this discussion when you take it to your home countries and home places is think about goals. How long would you like an operation to take if you had your choice? I would love to be able to tell all my customers that they can move their service over to me in a fixed number of hours, no matter what TLD. 4 hours sounds like a great target. 2 hours would be good. It would be even better, but I'm realistic. DNSSEC. When we are doing DNSSEC rollovers, there are multiple operations that have to be done in the right sequence. Right now, for most TLDs, we have to do these on multiple working days. To change the DNS key in DNSSEC keys via org, when I ran that experiment, it was basically a week if you started it on a Monday. And you did not forget to do it before on any of the days you had to do action. But you had to do an action every other day. So it is hard. It's much easier for operators not to mess up if they can do everything in one workday. Okay, so I'm here to see if there's any interest in talking about this, pushing towards moving the DNS and its operations more in line with user expectations. Okay, and the bonus, I'm going to be assigning every domain we have later this year. We are using an algorithm that 80% of validating resolvers today support according to measurements by Jeff Houston. So if you are in the 20%, you have a few weeks to update, unless you're ripe. I will go public with that one of the name servers on this net does not support ECDSA today, or it did not an hour ago. I'm told they're going to fix it. They fixed one. They haven't fixed the second one as of this morning. Okay? It's defined 3 years ago. And, yeah. Okay? I'm now putting on my asbestos suit, and I am ready for questions, comments.
Hi, Aaron Hughes. Looks like there's a bunch of different proposals in there, so I'll just comment on one of them. Updating DS records to the registrar, I think, is a great idea and would be lovely to have as a standard to allow for third-party authentication and modification. Of course, it requires some kind of API and authentication, hash, etc.
Yep.
It would be really nice to see a proposed standard for what that looks like, given that there are so many different registrars with so many different programming abilities, particularly since many of them are let's say, not self-sufficient in being able to code that kind of implementation for their customers. You know, it's easy enough to go after someone very large and say, hey, could you implement an API for us, and we'd like to have third-party access. But then it'll be different than everybody else's, and you'll end up having to write code for 1,000 different registrars. So if you're going to go for approaching something like this, I wouldn't suggest, say, go talk to your registrar, but rather come back with a proposed standard to say, here are a bunch of tools that we can arm you with to go talk to your registrar to point at a standard that would actually work and be ubiquitous access across all registrars. But I think it's a great idea.
Yes. I have been going around talking to various players and trying to get people that are in the registry world, registrar world, the DNS operator world to start talking about what are the requirements, what they want, and then we're going to sit down and write a standard and we will propose it later this year. There's going to be a workshop talking in not too distant future where a number of us are going to sit down and talk about the authorization model of it, which is the first part. Specifying the APIs hopefully is going to be a trivial exercise once we understand how to authorize the parties. Okay, thank you. Very good comment.
I think Jim was next.
Jim Reed speaking for myself. Ólafur, I think this is an interesting idea and it's worth investigating further. I have some concerns though that this looks to be an attempt to use the DNS protocol to fix a problem in registry operations. And I think that's a problem that's not going to be fixed.
I don't agree with you, Jim. This is all about operations.
Well, you see, part of the problem is that I think for a lot of the TLDs, particularly the CCTLD spaces, they're not updating their zone file at a fairly frequent interval. It might be happening once or twice a day, or maybe every 3 or 4 hours at best. So you don't get the .com experience or the .uk experience where the zone is updated almost in real time or very close to real time whenever a delegation is changed. So I'm not sure in those circumstances that fiddling around with the ability to change registry database entries, to change TTLs for NS records and so on will have a marked effect because of the fact you're dealing with, say, a daily generation of a zone file and a push out that to all of the name servers. Second point was earlier on, Ólafur, you said that you would like the CCTLDs to be more involved in this, and that surprised me a little bit because I would have thought that the GTLD space might be more amenable to be the crash test dummies for this kind of thing because there's a uniform contract there. And there's a whole bunch of new kids on the block, so they might be more amenable to new modes of working, whereas perhaps there's more of an entrenched attitude of we've always done it this way, particularly in some of the CCTLD land.
In the ICANN space, there are certain politics and policies involved that I prefer not to get involved in until I have a good solution to present to ICANN.
I appreciate that, but I think if you try to negotiate something between 100 or 200 CCTLDs, I don't think you're going to get any hope of finding a consensus.
I'm looking for 2, 3 that are willing to. I have Canada and EU that want to do some experiments with me, and there may be a few others. So if you want to talk, please come find me today or tomorrow. I'm only here through tomorrow, or send me email. Thank you.
I'm going to cut the lines here because we have already quite a few people, and I think Matt is next.
Matt Poundstead, just sort of speaking for myself here, I think some way for third-party DNS operators to update registry information is important. As much, I was telling you this the other night, as much as 10 years ago I was suggesting that at a CCTLD I was working for, that our technical contact should be able to update technical information. And yeah, it solves so many problems to be able to do that. As you're saying, there are issues in the ICANN space with trying to have registrants directly, or third-party operators directly talking to the registries. But it might be good to try that at least. I agree, it's a difficult political situation there, but if we could get those contracts updated to allow that, it would solve a lot of problems.
Yes.
Thought he was first.
Oh, sorry.
Jaromír Talíř, Cizinik. We have created about maybe 9 years ago open source registry called Fred, which is now used in about 8 other countries. And I think that we have a similar thought on our mind when we were designing it, because we created specific objects for name server sets and key sets that have different access rights for EPP client. So it's possible to have an EPP client which is able to modify just those objects, which may be something what we are calling for. So we are happy to cooperate with you with this issue.
Now I think it's true.
Hi, George speaking as a domain name holder. I have a lot of sympathy with what you are trying to achieve, because there are interactions I have with my registrar-registry combination that I find intensely frustrating. And I think we've all had those experiences. They are not easy transactions, and the timing components are frustrating. I am drawn to observe that when I interact in other spaces, such as web hosting or with other providers, it is quite routine for them to say, here's a hash I made. Prove that you have ownership of what you're trying to do by lodging that in the resource, the web or the DNS. And if you do that, I can talk to you better because I have here and now evidence of your intent. And whilst I can understand why Jim is saying in-band signaling in DNS for operations scary, there are drafts on the table about intense signaling for DS from the child up to the parent. So the idea of saying, here's a token that I'm going to give you, prove you've got control and make a change, and I will respect that, I could understand that process providing live in-band changes. But I would also observe, although this is very hard for me to say, I have some sympathy with the registrars because their economic model is predicated on keeping me as a customer for at least a year and doing as little as humanly possible at cost for me. And since what we're talking about is trying to improve the ability for me to make random changes on the fly, that's very bad for their model. So you could expect some pushback.
I'm expecting pushback from basically everybody involved.
I think we're at this mic.
Yeah, this is Stefan Lagerholm speaking for myself here. There's not only an RFC draft, there's actually an RFC that you wrote together with Warren Kumar and some other folks, 7344, that describes how this is being done. So there's no technical problem here. So what you're trying to solve right now, if I understand you correctly, is more of the political problem, how to get 7344.
There are two issues we omitted in that RFC. One, initial trust. Number two, timeliness. And that's what I'm trying to address here.
Right, but I don't know if you can solve the initial trust. You can't solve that within the DNS protocol itself, right?
No,
so
I can't, but that's why I need access to the registry system to put the DS for the first time up there.
I don't know who is next, but I guess Jeff, go ahead.
Jeff Houston, APNIC. I was actually responding to your TTL comment, and I must admit, it sort of seems to me that the DNS is one of those things where the current set of provisioning because of attacks is up to the second, but the lies we tell ourselves about how to configure zones is somewhere back in the Stone Age. And this idea that you set your TTL to 48 hours or a year or 3 years because it's never going to change is just nonsense. And, you know, I kind of like the idea that the entire names resolving system is actually provisioned to attack volumes. Set your TTLs down and you won't notice the difference, but you will be meeting expectations that I want to change, it can happen quickly rather than waiting till next week. So, you know, ECDSA, good idea. Short TTLs, good idea. Putting some of the provisioning back in the DNS in line with DNSSEC, you know, get with it, good idea.
Thank you.
So, Patrick Feldström, also speaking for myself like everyone else here, as it seems. A few comments. First of all, regarding TTL, I completely agree with you from my own experience on how to do transfers also between registrars. The TTL just must go down because trying to synchronize, there is a reason why someone would like to make those kind of changes in DNS, and that is most normally that the donating party don't want to cooperate, they have screwed up, they don't do their job. So you just want to sort of force do the change, so the TTL must be lower. What it should be to a proper balance, I don't know, but it must be lower. The second thing that I think you should be aware of is that you said, we don't want to become a registrar. So here, you would like to interfere with the distributed database model and synchronization between registries and registrars to communicate with the registries directly, and take over the job from the registrars. And of course they will probably do a pushback, okay? So I think, honestly, that the registrars, I don't know what kind of data you have, that registrars that you talk to, I think registrars much rather, at least sort of the sane ones, work on having you talk to the registrars instead of the registries, because we have to remember that the database model that is used in EPP is based upon changes made in the registrar and be pushed to the registry. Every time you have changes made in the registry that have to be synchronized back to the registrar from the registry is quite a really complicated operations.
Yes.
And we also have to remember that the registrar is the one that has a contractual agreement with the domain name holder on the actual functionality. So I think you're walking towards pretty tricky situations here, which are not only the fact that people are not cooperating. Thank you.
Patrick, I agree with you. I don't really care whether I'm talking to the registry or the registrar, but in many cases I will need the registry to tell me how to find the registrar.
All right. I hope you got what you wanted out of this session, Ólafur.
Pardon?
I hope you got what you wanted out of this session.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah,
It was
all right,
very
great.
positive.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Job Snijders, a plenary